With Season 21 dropping, there's definitely a bit of contest between Void builds and Arc builds, and which one is better. However, I have a Void Titan build that is extremely fun and is a bit different to everything else, but it is still as powerful as all of the other Void builds, plus it's a lot more fun. This Void build takes advantage of probably one of the most underused exotics on the Titan, and probably one of the most underrated build rotations that you've ever seen. With some of the new mods in the seasonal artifact, this just makes this build even better. I made this build a couple seasons ago, however, this is the updated version to make this build even stronger. This build consists of having constant Devour active, so you will never ever not be 100% health, making us Guardians nearly invincible, having a constant overshield that is always at max HP, meaning we basically have double health, the ability to go invisible whenever we like, huge volatile explosions which makes everything volatile, weakening nades, and you name it, we have plenty more with this build. It is one of the strongest Titan builds out this season, so stick around to the end to make sure that you can get everything right so that you can take full advantage of this Titan build this season. Just take a look at the gameplay in the background. You can't fault this. This looks a lot of fun. Everything's exploding, flying, you're invisible, you got full HP, so what more could you want this season? Warlock mains, I'm looking at you. This is your excuse to switch over to Titan for a couple weeks. This Titan build takes advantage of the chess piece, the Severance Enclosure, which states when you complete a finisher or a powered melee attack, it creates a huge void explosion. So this build is mainly focused around finishing enemies, which is not only super fun, but it also makes everything volatile and also weakens a lot of enemies. Chain a few finishes, throw a few grenades, and you're walking through every activity that Destiny throws at you. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the build. So into the subclass, I like to use Ward of Dawn. However, you can use Sentinel Shield if you're doing those less challenging activities. Ward of Dawn is definitely better for raids and GMs. On your abilities, I like to use the Rally Barricade, the smaller one, so that we can use this and shoot over it while increasing our reload speed and stability. I like to use the Shield Throw so that this shield can bounce around and damage and blow up multiple enemies at once. Vortex Grenade so it pulls enemies in and deals massive damage. For the aspects, Controlled Demolition is the most important. Basically doing anything with a void ability on this loadout, which is everything we do, it's going to make them volatile, and those enemies that explode will also make more enemies volatile. For the second aspect, I like to use Bastion. However, you can swap over to Offensive Bulwark. It's up to you. Either of these aren't too important. It's really up to you. You can use whatever. Offensive Bulwark is probably preferred because we can get more overshields through our seasonal artifact, which I will show you later. For the first fragment, I like to use Echo of Obscurity. This one's a bit different, and it's sort of needed in those higher challenging activities like GMs and Raid. Getting invisibility will save you more than you really know, plus it's a lot of fun. Secondly, Echo of Starvation. Whenever we pick up those Void Breach, it's going to grant us Devour. Once we have Devour, anything we do or kill, it's going to extend that duration and grant us full HP. Thirdly, Echo of Cessation. When we finish enemies, it's going to make them blow up and also make everything volatile around them. If any of these volatile enemies blow up, it's going to create a bigger explosion around that first finisher we finished. Also, when we finish them, it's going to create a Void Breach at their feet. When we pick that up, it's going to grant us more overshields. And on top of these Void Breaches granting us overshields, it's also going to give us class ability energy back. And once we use that class ability energy with some mods, it's going to help us grant our grenade back even faster, and also our Void Melee. The last aspect is Echo of Undermining. Our Void Grenades weaken targets, so when we see those mini bosses and yellow bars, it's going to give them a negative 15% debuff, making all of our Void abilities do more damage. The best thing about this build, Fragments and Aspects, is we don't really need to run Echo of Instability to grant volatile rounds. With Controlled Demolition, all of our finishes and Void abilities will make everything already volatile through the explosions and AoE damage that we are already doing. If you do feel like you want to run volatile rounds, you can sub Echo of Undermining out and run Echo of Instability. However, this isn't really needed because everything we do is already going to make everything volatile, so it's not really that needed. Jumping over to the mods, here is a quick screenshot of what I'm running. You can take a quick photo and copy them down, or you can stick around and I'll explain to you exactly why you want to run all of these mods. Starting off with the seasonal artifact, there's only 3 in here that you really need. Unto the Bridge is our first one. Defeating a void debuff target creates a void breach. Everything we're doing is going to debuff targets, so basically every enemy we kill is going to create a void breach. This is huge. Picking up these void breaches through Protective Breach is going to grant us an overshield or refresh our existing overshield. And finally, once you unlock Supernova in the final column, Picking up a Void Breach causes your next source of void damage to create a huge weakening pulse. This will then reset the rotation and it will count as a void debuff target, counting as creating a Void Breach. So all of these three artifacts here tie into each other perfectly. Jumping over to the mods, on the helmet, I like to run Heavy Ammo Finder and double Heavy Ammo Scout. You can't ask for more heavy ammo than running these three mods on the helmet. It's huge for you and your fire team, so I like to run these on the helmet. For the gauntlets, Grenade Kickstart is huge here. When we throw out that grenade, if we have any armor charges, it's going to give us a huge chunk of energy back because we want to be throwing out our void abilities as fast as we possibly can. Impact Induction, obviously when we throw out that shield throw, it's going to grant us more grenade energy, and Harmonic Loader because we're going to be using void weapons. Now, the bread and butter of this build is the exotic chest armor, the Severance Enclosure. You've probably never even used this on a Titan. Let's be real, I never had until I saw this build. For the mods for this, you can just use all damage resistance. Because we're going to be up close and personal finishing enemies, I like to run melee damage resistance. This is pretty important. Now, as the exotic perk states, powered melee final blows unleash a damaging explosion. Now, this works incredibly well with the shield throw. As the shield throw states, it actually bounces off multiple targets, and every target that this hits and kills is going to create a separate void explosion. So if you throw that shield throw out and it hits 4 enemies, you're going to see 4 huge void explosions. Finishers will also create explosions, and the higher tier enemy you finish on, the bigger the explosion. So if you finish yellow bars or mini bosses, these explosions are going to be bigger than your red bars. Jumping onto the boots, Innovation and Insulation, just to get those cooldowns faster by picking up Orbs of Power. And Stacks on Stacks is great, so that whenever we pick up an Orb of Power, we're actually going to get 2 armor charges, helping out with Grenade Kickstart. Finally, on the Titan mark, Explosive Finisher. So if we ever do seem to run out of grenade energy and we're like stale, we don't have a grenade, finishing an enemy will consume those stacks and grant our grenade energy back. This is huge. Double Bomber to reduce that grenade cooldown even further. So with the help of all of these mods, we're going to be getting our cooldowns back super fast. So I'm just going to give you guys some unedited footage of the Avalon mission at the 1830 mark. So I'm about 15 to 16 light under what it's recommended. And as you can see, I'm not really dying. It's very strong, this build, and a lot of the enemies are falling weak to my void abilities. So the rotation is pretty simple. There's not much to it. What you basically want to do is expend all of your void abilities like your grenade, your shield throw, and your class ability, and then you want to finish enemies. Finishing these enemies is going to create void explosions and also make all of the enemies volatile. As soon as you get any of your void abilities back, you want to use these ASAP to charge more void abilities and grant you Devour and create void breaches. The build is super simple. Like you can see, just finish enemies and spam your void abilities when you get them. Finishing enemies and collecting these void breaches is going to grant you more class ability. Throwing out your class ability is going to grant you more grenades. Dealing grenades is going to make everything volatile. Just anything you do in this build is going to make everything volatile and explode. It's super simple. Just spam your abilities and finish enemies when you possibly can. Nothing really threatens you with this build on because of the fact you will always have Devour active and a constant overshield. So this build is super fun and super strong. But anyway, Guardians, that is all I have for you today. Hope you enjoy. Feel free to drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see you later.